Hi everybody, Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au, just bringing you some more information about what's really happening with house prices in the major markets around Australia. Earlier in the week, I did a presentation about contrasting price data from two sources, SQM Research versus the data from CoreLogic, highlighting the point that what's happening with prices, according to certain sources, is not a matter of fact. It's a matter of opinion, according to the methodology they use and the parameters they use. And I contrasted the SQM research data with the CoreLogic data to show that you sometimes get very different results depending on whose figures you believe. And the problem is that media presents each individual set of research that's sent out in a press release from one of these companies. They present it as fact. Well, it's not fact. It's just a snapshot of a market according to one source. So here's another source, the official source. In fact, the Australian Bureau of Statistics this week published their latest figures on what's happening with house prices in the 8 capital cities. And it presents a different picture to the one that's generally portrayed in the headlines that we see in mainstream media, which are often saying things like house prices are falling across Australia. Simply isn't true. There's no source that actually says that. CoreLogic had divided in their latest data Australia into 14 market jurisdictions, 8 capital cities and 6 regional markets. And according to those figures in annual terms, prices right now are higher than they were 12 months ago in 9 of those 14 jurisdictions. The SQM research figures looking at the capital cities show that prices are up in 5 of the 8 capital cities. So here we have the ABS data, the official data on prices, their residential property price indexes published this week, and they show, similar to SQM research in fact, that in 5 of the 8 capital cities, prices rose in the most recent quarter, and they're also, if you look at it in annual terms, prices are higher than they were 12 months ago in 5 of the 8 capital cities. So looking at the quarterly data in the latest quarter, comparing the previous quarter, according to the ABS, prices have risen a little in Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth and Canberra, and they've risen quite a lot in Hobart. Now they're down a little according to this index in Sydney and in Melbourne in quarterly terms, and also in Darwin where the market continues to fall. Now you would think that given that the majority of capital cities have prices up, that the overall average across the 8 capital cities would be positive. In actual fact, it's slightly negative, and that's because the 2 biggest cities are in the negative according to these figures, and that's weighing down the state average. That's in quarterly terms. Now if we look at it in annual terms, where are prices in the 8 capital cities now compared to 12 months ago? According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics official figures, they are higher now than they were 12 months ago in Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Hobart and Canberra. So 5 of the 8 capital cities, including Melbourne. Melbourne's still higher in terms of pricing levels than it was 12 months ago. Brisbane's up a little, Adelaide's up a little, Canberra's up moderately, and Hobart's up a lot, 15% up in fact. And then the 3 cities where prices now are lower than they were 12 months ago, according to this source, and I keep stressing that, it's just the opinion from one source. These figures are different from the other 2 sources. Sydney is down 3.9%, Perth is down very slightly, and Darwin's down 6%. The Darwin market just continues to fall according to most measures. So it's interesting that the Bureau of Statistics has Sydney's house price index down 3.9%. That's a lesser fall than we've seen in the CoreLogic figures, which last time I saw their figures, they were saying that the Sydney house prices on average are down a little bit over 5%. So the ABS figure is a little bit less than that. And the SQM research figure was about 2%. So you've got 3 different figures in terms of where the Sydney market is from these 3 different sources. But we're looking here today at the Australian Bureau of Statistics figures, the official government statistician, so it's probably worth taking notice of. And in terms of where prices are compared to 12 months ago, they're still higher in Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, Canberra. They're a little bit lower in Perth, down 3.9% in Sydney and down 6% in Darwin. And the overall average for the 8 capital cities is slightly in the negative, at minus 0.6%. That again is because of the size of Sydney, and it weighs down the over average. So despite the fact that 5 of the 8 capital cities are in the positive, the overall average for the 8 capital cities is in the negative because of the influence of Sydney and the size of Sydney. So that will be the reason why you will be reading headlines saying Australian property price is down. And it's actually, this media doesn't do its job properly. They need to segment the information they present and actually explain what that figure actually means, because as I said, in most cities prices are still in the positive, and in a couple of cases very much in the positive. And of course, like most research sources, they ignore regional Australia. Some of the strongest markets right now, the ones where activity is rising and prices are rising the most, are actually in regional Australia, but they don't ever get a Guernsey because they're not considered important enough to include. Well, we certainly do at Hotspotting. We have reports on many of the major regional markets around Australia, such as Ballarat and Bendigo in Victoria, which are very positive markets at the moment, Newcastle and Nanta region in New South Wales, Sunshine Coast in Townsville in Queensland, and many others. That's it for now. Just trying to bring a little bit of perspective to what's really happening with prices right across Australia. Very, very different from many of the headlines that you'll be reading, and obviously very different from that absolute nonsense that was spewed forth by 60 Minutes on Sunday last weekend. That's it for now. Terry Ryder from Hotspotting signing off. We'll talk to you again soon.